Am I alive? Or am I just like staring blankly at a wall? I saw that there were people here earlier. Are there people here? Please put something in the chat if you are here and alive so that I know that you're alive. And I will drink this tiny, tiny espresso cup. Morning! All right, I guess that is someone coming from the other side of the world because it sure as heck ain't morning over in this side of the world. President accounted for. Hello! Oh, lots of familiar names. That's very exciting. I guess familiar humans. I shouldn't just, like, depersonify you and call you, just call you names, because you are more than a name. But I can only see the names. But I know there's people behind them. So, and Joshua's here, Ken is here, Christy's here, Amanda's here, Rural, SK is here. And apparently in some part of the world where it is morning, or maybe you just woke up. Maybe you're in this time zone and all sense of time has lost reality and it is currently 5 p.m. and yet it is morning to you because you slept all day, which is a pretty normal response, to be frank, to whatever this is. Just realizing, did we close the window? Well, we'll find out if you all hear a bunch of cross traffic, because we do live on a busy street, which is like a foot away. It's not social distanced. The window is not social distance for me. It would be way too close. We have there's only 2 questions for today's live stream, other than trying this donut, but both of the questions are pretty in-depth, and I'm going to use it to try to talk pretty much exclusively about unemployment and where we are currently at with unemployment. And I sincerely apologize for anybody to which that does not apply to, because I've now done like 5 live streams since the beginning of the pandemic about unemployment in the United States. It's just been very chaotic. And that means that there's new updates and changes and information every week. And despite the fact that this was passed back in March, and there was sort of like, we were all like, yes, they passed this thing, this is going to happen. Similar to how it's been rolled out in some countries, it's been an absolute mess. And essentially they tried to use a system that was not built for the volume of claims. It just wasn't built for this, the unemployment system. And that means that there is a massive amount of learning process on the side of government, on the side of people who have never applied for unemployment before in their life, because previously the requirements were so narrow And it paid so little, a lot of people that might have qualified for it just wouldn't have applied for it because all the work that you have to put into it. And now we're discovering how hard all the work is. Anyway, it's been a mess and things keep changing. And so it was time for an update. And I keep getting questions. I've gotten probably an unemployment question a couple times a day since the beginning of this pandemic. And so just wanna try to answer some questions here. More folks are here. Denise is present and accounted for with emoji, very important. And ArtSpark is here as well, which is great because I know ArtSpark had one of these questions. We've got more Australians here. This is great. All right. We've got multiple people for which this is morning. Therefore, that makes the coffee that I'm drinking more appropriate than it is really at 5 or 8 p.m. in the United States. I like how I say 5 or 8 p.m. as though there are no time zones in the middle. It's a very coastal elite of me to be like, it's only 5 or 8 p.m. But statistically, if you live in the United States, you are far more likely to live in one of those two time zones. So, all right. We may have a kitten guest again. If you were here last week or you watched it later, you may have seen that the kitten napped the entire time behind me. But currently she's acting extremely freaked out by the reflector as though it is cursed and is walking around it very slowly. So Art of the Budget says, in my artist collective, we always say all 4 time zones. I mean, so my problem is, like, as you may have noticed to the people here, I can't just, there's more than 4 time zones in the United States. There is also Hawaii and Alaska, which are beyond those 4 time zones. And then additionally, we have multiple people here that aren't even in the same day as today. So when I send out the Patreon emails for these, as some of you probably know, I decided to list 4 time zones. So I list Pacific because I'm the one in it, Eastern United States, and then I list GMT, and actually I've been listing 5, and then I list Western Australia because I know a lot of folks are in Perth, and then I'll list the time zone for Melbourne and Sydney in Australia. And I figure with GMT, anybody in Asia or Russia can kind of do the math. So if you're in like a less common time zone, or if you're in like England that isn't actually in GMT for half the year, then you can at least like do the math. There is a tail, and also she is moving the lights. So and now this is very cute. We might have to move the camera. There's just too much. If we move it, there's just too much going on. So, well, there's a possibility that a camera is going to be moved. Anyway, how are folks doing today? How are folks doing? Joe says that Sunday is nice and I'll like it once I get here. That's good. I'm considering tomorrow, as Sunday being a day where I try to film myself having a productive day, with the idea that if I do that, maybe I'll be more aware that I need to have a productive day. I've done that like a couple times and posted vlogs of it in the past, and I feel like it's been helpful. But also I've started it a number of times and not finished it because I have fallen apart on the productivity and decided it wasn't worth filming. So yes, Dora is the new lighting director. This is true. Excellent suggestion. She's definitely helping, I guess. Are we switching to Kitten Cam? Kitten Cam is being held up right now. Kitten Cam is live. Joe says that it's actually 8 a.m. here, not 7 a.m. Oh, Joe, I think I got confused because do you follow GMT or no? Or, I mean, do you follow daylight savings in Western Australia or not? Because I know that you were 8 hours off, or you were 7 hours off from GMT, but then maybe GMT to daylight savings time. It's very confusing. Clocks are dumb. I hate time zones. Joe says working it out from GMT is so much easier than any of the US time zones. Yeah, I mean, it's dumb because it's like GMT, you're the same day for way more of the day than you're the same day for the US time zones too. So, well, now that we've all determined I'm not good at time zones and I do not like them, we were discussing the other day on the forums the advantages of working for people that are in a different time zone than you live in. So, like, folks were saying that if you're not a morning person, then you could work on like the West Coast, but live on the East Coast, which means that like everybody else would not, like everyone else would not actually, like start work until the time that you actually want to be at. So you would look like, if you started work at like 11 a.m., you would look like the productive person in the office because there's 3 hours difference. And so it's like a very solid thing. Joe says no daylight savings time, 8 hours off year round. Well, it's 8 hours off year round if you're not considering GMT as a daylight savings, because they do it in London, right? I don't know. All right, yes. Denise said, did you put I hate time zones on your data job resume? No, but I think that that's pretty common among anybody who does any kind of data work is hating time zones. So fair. I have had to like reformat time zones so many times as part of data work. My current like data job is doing transit schedules, and time zones, sometimes we're doing transit schedules that go between time zones, and often they will also go into like the second or third day. So if we're doing like a Greyhound bus or like a long distance bus that crosses time zones, then you have to deal with the fact that like not only will you sometimes be in the past, which the spec does not like. It does not like it when you upload a data set that contains time travel, which is the actual error that you will get in the system when you try to like run a Python script to check it. And then also like if a bus runs after midnight, we have to keep running the same day because otherwise it would like break it up. So that means that like you'll have a run that starts at 11:30 and it ends at 2 a.m., which means it ends actually at 25 o'clock. And with those really long multi-day ones, you could go up to like hour 80 because it'll be like a Greyhound bus that goes across the US. Anyway, so hating time zones is extremely relevant to my job. So it's probably like a good thing to put on my data resume. Sometimes we have buses that cross time zones, like city buses, like not even buses that are interstate, because they're Indiana is a great example. There are just some counties in Indiana that just refuse to do daylight savings time because of like cows, slash hating the government. And that means that you can sometimes drive you'll like cross the border and it'll be fine and you'll do a time change and then you'll go back and then you cross into the next town and you come back to the time zone. Like, so you'll have like 4 time zone switches in only a 40-minute ride, because none of the towns that like don't do time zones are very large. So most of them are served by like anyway. You came here to learn about unemployment, not about the intricacies of doing GTFS specification for transit agencies. Artspark loved the Kitty Bath commercial. I'm glad. She's now trying to be lighting director again, and it's very possible that you're going to hear a lot of crashing from over here. GMT does not equal the UK. It doesn't have daylight savings time. I thought it did, and then it got rid of it, but you sound much more confident than me. Yeah, I was living in London in August, so I guess daylight savings time wouldn't have applied. It was 8 hours ahead of here, but we do daylight savings time, so. Anyway. All right, we don't need to talk about time zones anymore. Oh no, wait, one more comment. He said my BFF growing up went to a college that was in a different time zone than the town it was in. Lots of class time mistakes for off-campus living. Oh my gosh, that sounds terrible. Yeah, the airport that we frequently flew out of when I was growing up was in a different state that didn't observe daylight savings time. And so sometimes you would like be in that same situation. So yeah, it's very frustrating. Joe says, I would be in those daylight savings time hating counties. Daylight savings time is horrible. So the west coast of the United States, we only have 3 states on the west coast of the US, and they all agreed that like together we're going to avoid daylight savings time. Like each legislature passed a thing. And so we were all supposed to next year, I believe, switch to no daylight savings time. But in California, it got held up in the courts after the legislature approved it or something. So soon we won't have daylight savings time here. I think it's better to be like in unification with nearby states and definitely nearby counties than it is better. So Joe says that Joe's also here for the donut. So all right, we'll talk about the donut and then we'll talk about unemployment and move away from this entire situation. Okay, so this donut is a tiramisu donut, and it's like filled with tiramisu, and then it has this like vanilla cream frosting, and the top is covered in a coffee powder. So, it's pretty great. Yes, it's pretty good. It's also vegan, as the ones always are. And I genuinely I wasn't really stoked about a donut today, possibly because after this, we're going to catch up on a RuPaul's Drag Race and have nachos. And I was like, ugh, now that we've switched to moving the live streams to every week during the pandemic, I've been like, oh, should I really be eating a donut every week? Because eating a donut every other week was like a reasonable amount of donut. I didn't really want it to eat a donut. And then I decided this sounded kind of good, but I couldn't remember if I'd had this on a live stream before, because I have had it before, but maybe in a secret non-live stream donut eating way. So I apologize if I've had it before on the live stream. So this won't be the first reaction taste test, but you know, one issue is that I put these donuts out so you can see them. And even though they don't need to be refrigerated or anything, the power of the hot lights on them, I can always feel them like crispifying, or if they have like melty things, they start melting. Okay, should we head into an unemployment question, and we will use the donut eating as a palate cleanser in between talking about this. So I'll give you first a general overview of what has been going on in the US. And I've covered this on a couple other live streams as far as like what changed. So essentially Congress in March passed the CARES Act, and the CARES Act laid out a ton of provisions for paying for unemployment and made a ton more people qualified for what is called pandemic unemployment assistance, and laid out explicitly for states that a ton of people that would never have traditionally qualified for unemployment, which includes gig workers that have 1099 income, W-2 workers who had just lost hours but not had lost all of their income, self-employed people that ran businesses as S-corps, all of those people are supposed to be able to apply for unemployment. And they are, in addition to being able to get unemployment, which one thing we'll get into is how hard it is to determine how much someone should even get on unemployment when they fall into the self-employed or gig worker category. One of the other things they did is they said everyone, regardless of what their base amount is for unemployment, will receive this extra $600 a week. And this is going to be fully funded by the federal government. It comes from the magic money we created. You can go back and watch the Nacho live stream where we discussed where money comes from if you want to know where that came from. But what this extra $600 a week was essentially for a lot of people going to mean that they made more on unemployment than they were making at their job. And it became very advantageous for a lot of employers that were really struggling to keep people on to lay them off because they knew that they wouldn't be making it impossible for them to pay their rent. Every state is a little different about how much it pays out on unemployment, but if you were low income or even median income before, in a lot of states, unemployment previously would pay you just a small fraction of your salary, and a lot of places it's not even enough to pay like rent or basic expenses. And the process for claiming it, while it is a lot easier if you're just a traditionally laid off employee, it is still not the easiest thing. It's done on a weekly basis. You have to call in every week. You have to certify that you're looking for jobs. And the process is entirely built on this ancient system that every state uses that was programmed originally in the early 90s. And it really does show that it is programmed in the early 90s. And the claim system relies on old school landlines. And I'm sure you heard people were constantly trying to apply over the phone. They were dealing with the fact that like the lines were busy. A lot of people called 800 or 1,000 times in a day just trying to get through. A while ago, I was bemoaning that Generation Z didn't know what a dial, like a busy signal sounded like, because most of them never called landlines that still had busy signals anymore. And a lot of Gen Z has now learned what a busy signal sounds like because it's coming from the unemployment website. So that's a little basic background. And a thing to know about how unemployment's set up is it's a partnership between states and the federal government. And it's funded by something called the Federal Unemployment Trust. And there's a lot of people who don't typically qualify for it because they aren't paying into it. It is technically an insurance program. So the way that it works is that the employers, on behalf of each employee, will be reporting wages and to the state employment office, and then they will also be paying a small percentage tax. In most states, it's technically set at like 6 or 7%, which is a huge tax. But for a lot of employers, that's reduced down to 0.5 or 2.4%. It can really vary, but it ends up being it's just part of hiring someone, right? But it also protects them. So if they do get laid off because of a lack of work or business, what happens to the employer is usually their tax rate will jump because essentially the insurance has been used. And so in the past, are we switching to filming the kitten bath? You could just like overlay it on me on the screen. Not that I think my face is nearly as important as the kitten bath. Okay, so where was I? I got very distracted by talking about the kitten bath. Normally what happens is if a employer lays off a bunch of their employees and doesn't entirely close, but say they, just didn't have a lot of work for their employees and laid off a portion of their workforce, the next year their unemployment insurance rate would jump. So in Oregon, it would jump from 2.4% to 3.4%, which is notable. There is also some very small categories of employers that are what are called self-employed or self-insured. And self-insured means that they actually have an agreement with the state unemployment office where they will pay the complete percentage of the worker's salary directly if they lay them off. It's mostly only really small nonprofits that qualify for this, and there were rare cases in which it actually did make sense for the nonprofits because you're like, whoa, why would they want to do that instead of paying 3.4%? But in really small nonprofits, it's actually quite rare to lay off staff. And so taking that risk essentially before you laid off staff in some cases could be a prudent financial decision. However, it's a prudent financial decision except in the context of a global pandemic. So anyway, that is kind of the basics. So that's kind of how the unemployment system works overall. What the CARES Act did is it essentially told all of these states, it gave all the states almost no guidance, and Congress gave them barely any notice and said, hey, guess what? You have to allow all of these people into the system that previously wouldn't be able to be in the system. And we haven't really figured out how you're going to do that. So the like backup system for it had just not, there just was no underlying system for them to have self-employed workers, have 1099 income workers. It used to be that only in very few states, if you had multiple jobs and you lost one of them, you could file for unemployment, or if you reduced hours. All that changed, but they gave the states no resources to do it. And then in addition to that, we are now at the point where the estimate for unemployment rate in the US is 25%. And that means that these states had to figure out how to process all of these claims in a system that was programmed in a language from the 90s that barely any programmers know how to work with anymore. The only people that know how to work with it are folks that worked on programming government systems in the 80s and 90s. And then in addition, they're still having to process all of these normal claims at a volume for a lot of them that was like, I was talking with the Oregon unemployment officer a couple weeks ago, and she said in 1 week, they had more claims to process that were ones that were successfully gotten through the system. And this was before they even had any ability to process self-employment claims or anything. She said they processed more claims in a week than they had in the previous 7 years. And so understand like the scale. And then they're also trying to do this while implementing social distancing in call centers at the state and trying to figure out how to hire employees during a global pandemic and onboard them. So, it has been extremely frustrating. We are talking about COBOL now. Multiple people are very excited about COBOL, which is a sign that you are an older nerd, most likely. Rural would like to emphasize that she knows how to program COBOL. I'm pretty sure that you worked on government systems in the 80s or 90s. I'm fairly certain, or I don't know, you were just a nerd who really wanted to learn how to program COBOL. So, I mean, one of the cooler stories that came out of this is a bunch of people that do know how to program COBOL have like come out of retirement to try to help states implement these changes under this massive pressure. But I guess I wanted to set the stage for why this process has been so frustrating. It has been incredibly frustrating for people on the user side, but it's also completely overwhelming on the state side. The Oregon unemployment system, and we're not a huge state, but they're hiring like 250 new people in the past 3 weeks to be able to process claims. So like, just understand like what, and while trying to implement this new system and like onboard these people. Now, let's get to what is actually happening. Most states were not actually taking claims. So CARES Act passed in March. A lot of people initially applied like as soon as they could, if they fell into those categories that were suddenly qualified for unemployment once that extra 600 was announced. And they were like, oh my God, I can actually qualify. I would also say there were a lot of people who were going to qualify who did not realize they qualified because in the past they've never qualified for unemployment income. And they've just not qualified for unemployment insurance, and they assume it doesn't appeal to them. Someone I was talking with the other day, her childcare provider, who runs a childcare center, she was calling and making sure she was going to get her spot reserved because she has been having to take care of her child while working from home, and she has appreciated her childcare provider more than ever. But she was like, what do I need to do? Can I pay like a deposit to like lock things in? But she was like, oh, you can, she's like, you can apply for unemployment. And she was like, no, I can't. I'm like a business. I don't have like W-2 income or 1099 income. I like run a business with employees. And she's like, oh, no, you can. You actually do qualify now. So there's a lot of people who may not realize that they qualify for unemployment that are in this category. So that's actually one of the first questions that we have. So this came from someone in the Personal Finance Society, which of course, And I believe they're on the stream, but I'm not going to out them if they don't want to be outed for this. But one of the big questions there was, what can we apply for? So I'm going to put it up. All the questions are very long. I told you these were going to be the complicated unemployment questions, not the easy ones. It's the big one, the one with the yellow highlighting. It's up. Okay. The problem is I want to read it.
Oh.
Can I have that, or does it need to be plugged in?
Nope.
Okay. Here, I'll pull it up on my phone because it's very long. So I want to actually be able to walk through it for folks. Now, but everybody's reading it now while I pull this out. Yeah. So it's going to be like
12 miles
long. Oh my God. Where is it? All right, cool. So I'm the CEO of an LLC and just recently had to put the company on hiatus because we lost all of our revenue pretty much overnight in mid-March. My question, do you know of any sources for economic assistance for people like me, owner/CEO of a small private company, to cover loss of my income? I don't receive 1099 or W-2 income, but instead take a draw on company revenues when there's enough dollars. The independent contractors I had to let go of a few weeks ago are qualifying for unemployment, but I can't qualify for unemployment insurance because I don't have 1099 or W-2 income to show. I applied for the SBA's PPP loan twice, no go, and those benefits would have only gone towards my team members and business expenses anyway. The EIDL loan advance, also from the SBA, is only for agricultural businesses right now. I've also applied for economic assistance grants, but the arts culture sector is under siege and I've been turned down repeatedly. Most other grants for arts culture company don't cover loss of income anyway. My CPA is helping some, but he says some small business owners, CEOs like me, are being left out in the cold. Appreciate your thoughts and ideas. Also, meow and thanks. All right, so there's a lot to unpack here, but there's essentially multiple questions to unpack here. And I want to start with the first one about unemployment, because I think a lot of people have a belief, because we've spent so much time being like, gig workers now qualify, 1099 workers now qualify. But in this, and I also spend so much time telling people that even if they are a 1099 employee, even if they work for Postmates or whatever, they actually are a business owner. And I spent all this time being like, you're a business owner, make sure you take those deductions, blah, blah, blah. But I also want to emphasize that even though you do not get 1099 income from your own business, you are, in fact, a self-employed person that now qualifies for unemployment insurance. And if you tried to go through the system before and you found that it wasn't set up for you, you may want to try again, because a lot of states had started rolling out their specific pandemic unemployment insurance like this week. And they might have a different portal. I have known multiple people that applied through the original system that were self-employed because nothing else was set up. And the back end, actually, I found this out from a friend who works in the employment office, but the back end is actually set up as two completely separate channels. So if you are someone that is only going to qualify under pandemic unemployment assistance, your information actually got shunted to the second channel. And she told me that the folks that are working in unemployment offices, at least in Oregon, they're not even training the old people on the pandemic unemployment assistance program because there is so much to cover. So they're only training the new people that they're hiring. So I just want to say that if you've previously talked to someone on the phone or you tried to apply through the system a couple weeks ago and you found it not set up for you as an S-Corp owner or an LLC owner or a 1099 person, or just someone who lost hours at their W-2 job, then you may find that the system now works. In most cases, they are telling you not to reapply, but then at the same time, they aren't giving any timeline for when they're going to switch you over to the new system. And so most advice I've seen from people that are successful is that they did apply through the new system. This isn't true in every single state that there's a separate like facing thing for pandemic unemployment. The way it was supposed to be set up was that you would apply through the like normal portal and then you would get pushed to pandemic unemployment assistance, but that hasn't actually been true. There also, the general advice I've been given is if you can get through by email or phone, I will say that the Oregon Unemployment Office just legitimately declared email bankruptcy. They had gotten so many emails into the pandemic, like, or into their like general, like, email us if you have questions helpline, that they literally sent out a press release saying, we are not checking anything that we received before this date. So if you have questions, you need to resend them because they just had such a backlog. They knew they were going to never get through it. And so much had changed since the beginning that if they went through it in a first come, first serve order, they knew that they would be like, that essentially things would have changed. Some people like probably emailed like a bazillion times and then their claim went through. So okay, so that's the first thing I want to emphasize. Just because you don't have 1099 income, if you are a sole proprietor or if you are a primary shareholder in an S Corp and you have lost income related to the pandemic, then I want you to understand that you are technically supposed to be able to qualify for unemployment insurance as long as you have a TIN or an SSN. You don't have to be paying into it previously. You don't have to have been cutting yourself like checks from your S Corp or your LLC. You just have to be someone who is a sole proprietor. Here is the thing. Almost every state, if you do not have a 1099 to go off of, and in many cases, even if you do, they are going off of your net income from your 2019 taxes. So if you haven't done your taxes yet, I am highly recommending you do. You can still file your taxes. I've mentioned this before. You are not going to owe your taxes until July 15th. So if you are waiting and putting it off because you're afraid that you're going to owe, once again, IRS is the best creditor to have. I've said that time and again. They really are not awful like most creditors, and they will work with you and will do a payment plan. And in some cases, they're even doing forgiveness. But additionally to that, it's not even due through to July 15th. And for most states, the way that you're going to need to access it is that you're going to need to have a 2019 tax return. So the income that they are using to determine your basic unemployment benefits in most states is from your Schedule C, which is what you filled out if you're self-employed. That's also what you fill out if you are a shareholder or a partner in a multi-partnership LLC, or if you are a partner in a S Corp. You may or may not do it depending on how you pay yourself. But you mentioned that you are an LLC and you have independent contractors, which means that you are likely a single member sole proprietor LLC, in which case you would file a Schedule C on your 2019 taxes. And I spend so much time on the show in normal circumstances telling people, take every deduction you possibly can. You want to get that profit as low as possible on that Schedule C. You want to take the home office deduction if you qualify for it. Mileage, self-employed health insurance, all of that. However, if you have not yet filed your 2019 taxes, and you are using that to base your unemployment claim on it, and there's a possibility that you're going to have a very large difference, and maybe you're going to have very little income after you deduct all your taxes. So, for example, last year, my gross income from my business, which was my sole income, was $35,000 roughly, and my net income at the bottom of my Schedule C, after all of those deductions, my adjusted gross income was less than $7,000 because I milked everything. Cost of goods sold, self-employment income, paying contractors, all of that. For me, that was to my advantage because I had paid some estimated taxes, so I ended up getting money back at tax time. I also earned the earned income tax credit and all of those things using legal deductions. So in my case, it made sense to do that. On the flip side, if you are worried about not making enough on unemployment, remember that you're going to, in most states, you're either going to, if you are self-employed, you're going to get either one or two things. The way pandemic unemployment assistance was set up was that it said for self-employed people, the minimum benefit needs to be 50% of the maximum weekly amount. So in most states, that maximum weekly amount is somewhere between $500 and $600. So you would have to get around $300 a week from the main unemployment assistance, and then you would get that additional $600 a week. So for a lot of people, that is enough to pay their bills or keep their heads above water, blah, 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 if they are able to receive that. Does that make sense thus far? I have talked a lot. So folks, let me know if they are caught up in understanding this. And I will stare at this donut and think about it. Did I lose everybody? Nobody wants to listen to me talk about unemployment. They just want to see me eat a donut. And the cat. Just want to see the cat. Well, no one has said they understand it yet, so this isn't dead on my screen, is it? Nope, just nobody is chatting.
Nobody's chatting.
Okay. All right. Folks said that it's making sense so far. Sorry for the awkward long silence there. All right. So, good. Okay. Now that we've laid the base here, this is the things that you should understand about applying for unemployment in different states as a sole proprietor. Is that you're going to need to come prepared with your 2019 taxes. Initially, they were saying that they were going to take 2018 taxes, but the way unemployment works is that it's based on your income from a quarter of four periods, which is the earliest four in the last five. There are 13 states that have their own quarters that they use, but it's essentially based on income in those quarters, and that's what determines your benefit amount. The more you earn in those quarters, the higher your weekly benefit amount is. There's a minimum and there's a maximum. And the minimum in most states is around $200 a week. And the maximum in most states is around $600. In some higher income states, it might be as high as like $684, I think it is in New York, per week. So if you earn a lot of money in those base periods, you will likely get that maximum amount. None of this includes that extra $600. So your base period right now in the current quarter is based on quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, and quarter 4 of 2019. 2019, not 2020. The waiting quarter is essentially January through March of this year. So if you apply anytime between March, April, May, and the end of this month, then your income that it's going to look at is going to be the quarters of 2019. And that's true, like that base period, unless you're in one of those states that uses a slightly altered schedule, that is going to be true for both self-employed people and for people applying under the traditional system. And then, so in May, it'll switch to, at the end of May, so for June, that quarter will then switch to quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4, and then quarter 1 of 2020. So it'll be the last 3 quarters of 2019. So it's kind of rolling, if that makes sense. That being said, I am 90%, it's really dumb to be a betting woman these days. I was going to say I'm 90% sure. I really shouldn't put odds on it. It seems extremely likely that because the states have taken so long to like kind of implement this, that it's very likely that they, even for sole proprietors, they're still going to look at your 2019 tax return rather than any sort of base quarters since you haven't been paying into the system. Okay. How are we feeling about this? So it doesn't matter if you're 1099 or you're sole proprietor or whatever. I would recommend applying again if you've previously applied. And then I also want to tell you that you do probably qualify. So ArtSpark said 2019 taxes filed and did every deduction possible, so showed a loss, which is great for taxes, but not good for unemployment insurance. Okay, so one, it depends on whether or not you showed a loss on your, one, you can amend your taxes if you want. It's totally a thing you can do. You've got 3 years to amend your taxes, so if you decided it might be worth paying a slight amount of taxes later, you may be able to actually not show a loss. The other thing that you can do, which is like that amending your taxes is a little complicated. But the other thing I will tell you is that even if you did show a loss, if you showed income and employment as a self-employed person, you would only get that minimum payment, but then you would get that extra $600 a week. So you would essentially be getting, let's say the minimum payment is $200. Let's just round and say there's 4 weeks in a month rather than 4.3 because it makes the math easy. But that would be 800, which would be 200 a week, plus 2,400, which is the pandemic assistance for 4 weeks. So altogether, you would get 3,200 a month before taxes. And you can choose with unemployment if you want to take the taxes out ahead of time when you'd get it, or if you want to pay the taxes later. I usually recommend, because it's rather annoying, to just take the taxes out. It is a little like harder and weirder if you're self-employed and you're used to not having that option. But I recommend people do get that taxes out. But if you really need the cash now and it's like a cash flow issue, you can choose to kind of essentially pay them later. Okay. There was a second part of this question. If I've like walked through all that. So anyway, even if you did show a loss, it's whatever's on the bottom of your Schedule C, and then it should show that you're employed for that year, and you should be able to qualify for pandemic unemployment assistance, if that makes sense. Okay, I do want to deal with some second myths about the payroll protection loan. I will say payroll protection loan is, I was trying to recommend absolutely everybody apply to it. I personally did probably 10 or 11 applications for the same organization. We did finally eventually get it, and we also got offered 2 other ones that we had to withdraw our applications. But we didn't make it through the first round, and then in the second round, we did get it. Payroll protection loans for self-employed people have been extremely confusing, but there's a couple things I do want to talk about, because you can apply for payroll protection loan even if you are a sole proprietor, and there is still money out there, so you can apply with another place if you want to try. There are places, I was recommending that people try to go with community banks that they have a relationship with, if they can, and that's where I ended up finding success. But I will also note for sole proprietors, Square, QuickBooks / Intuit, which is their parent company, and PayPal are all accepting applications still for payroll protection loans. And a lot of people have had success with getting through them. And I will also say that PayPal seemed really well set up for the needs of a self-employed person. And QuickBooks, if you use QuickBooks Payroll, QuickBooks Online, any of that, you can apply as their customer through them in a lot of cases. And the great part is they already have a lot of this stuff on file for you if you're already a customer. So it did make the process a little easier applying through them, but they're taking like a more limited scope of people. And I believe you do have to be a customer to apply through Intuit. But like everybody owns Intuit. So everybody uses Intuit products for something, right? Because they like own all of the accounting world. Do we need a donut break before I dive into the payroll protection loans? Let's have a donut break. I feel like I've been talking about complicated stuff like really hard. All right, so if you tuned out because this didn't apply to you and you now would like to see me eat the donut, we are going to try the donut. This is the tiramisu donut, and it's got like this cream that goes all the way through the middle. It's the most important part. The cream is really good. It tastes like the same cream that's on the their Portland Fog donut, which is like Earl Grey. So I normally love coffee stuff, but this has like really fine coffee powder on the top and it kind of like coats your throat. I don't really know what's tiramisu about it yet. Is it the glaze that makes it tiramisu? Claire says this looks delicious. It is delicious. I would say, though, that this, like, powder on the top, it really does make you, like, feel like you're gonna have a dry cough, and then you question if, maybe you caught COVID. So, all right. Claire says, I don't know why I keep watching these since I deeply envy your donuts. I have no source for vegan donuts. I'm sorry. I know not everybody has a walking distance pickup only vegan donut shop. It is pretty great. And it's a tax deductible way for me to eat donuts. The most important. This is a little, like, ridiculous to eat on camera. All right. One more big bite, and then we'll come back to the donut. And then once again, I just got, like, a bunch of this coffee powder. I feel like it could use more hardening of the coffee powder or something. It is good, though. Hey, I have a napkin again. I just want to point out, I got made fun of for the fact that I never have a napkin. And now it is making me remember to bring a napkin in. Which is really good because I'm completely surrounded by reflectors and cords. And I can't actually escape here without probably breaking something. Are we going back to Kitten Cam? She's really cute, is she not? Look at that. Look at that little kitten. Very important bath. Maybe I should just leave her up while I continue to describe what's going on with the PPP loans. So, the payroll protection loans, sole proprietors can get them, and you can use it to pay yourself. So one thing that was mentioned in this question was the payroll protection loan wouldn't really help me because the only thing I could use it for was paying my own independent contractors. Since you mentioned they're independent contractors, one thing I should note is that you actually can't pay independent contractors with the payroll protection loan. Well, it's technically a loan, so you can pay anything you want. The downside of it, though, is that you can pay anything you want with it, but you would have to pay it back. You wouldn't get the forgiveness for the loan. The payroll protection loan probably wouldn't make sense in the case of someone having a loss because the way they've determined it for sole proprietors is that you can pay yourself and likely get 100% forgiveness if they set it at the net profit on the 8 weeks of the net profit on your Schedule C. So yes, okay, I'm distracted by the discussion about the donuts, but yes, I expected some layers of delicious stuff throughout the donut. Like, what is tiramisu? Can someone, like, look up what tiramisu is? Because I thought that, like, tiramisu was more, like, gel-like. But maybe it's, like, it's tiramisu inspired. I mean, the cream is incredible, though. What is tiramisu flavor, I guess, is my real question. Because I don't really know what the tiramisu flavor is. Amanda is petting the kitty. I mean, she's in the middle of a bath, so I wouldn't pet her right now. She's got priorities. Don't touch your mouth, folks. It's bad to do. It's okay. I'm not outside the house. It's fine. Tiramisu is layers of ladyfingers dipped in espresso and rum. Cool. I just think of it as like it's very gel-like. I like the like texture. It definitely has espresso powder on the top, and I think it's a rum glaze. So I guess it's like inspired. I will say the donut core is like incredible. But yes, I think yeah, it's chocolate, coffee, rum, and cream flavor. I believe that is the flavor for this, but like obviously it's not layered with egg yolk custard because it's vegan. But it does kind of like look like egg yolk custard on the like side. You see like it's like dripping down the side. So, all right. Payroll protection loans. So the way they have set it is essentially forgiveness for sole proprietors is their net profit divided by 52 times 8. So it's 8 weeks of your self-employment income from 2019. So let's say that your net profit last year was $10,000. Then you would divide that by 52. What is 10,000? I should have done this math before this. I used to be good at doing math in my head, I swear, and I feel like I've gotten worse. All right. So 10,000 divided by 52 times 8. So the total amount that you could get forgiven for the loan and that you would get approved for the loan is $1,538. And considering how much work, if you had $10,000 of net self-employment income last year, for most people, that would probably not be worth the application process. I would say you get approved for slightly more because you can spend up to 25% of the loan on your mortgage or rent payment for the business, your utilities, and like fringe benefits. So if you pay health insurance for employees, which could include yourself. Yeah. So that's it. That I wouldn't recommend PPP payroll protection loans for a sole proprietor that's showing a loss or doesn't have a lot of income. But I would recommend it for someone that did have a high amount of net income last year. But unemployment insurance would be the way to go. The EIDL loans. So a lot of people applied the first day that they were open. They changed the rules. And as mentioned, they are now restricting it for folks that are restricting it for folks that only agricultural folks now can apply for it. What they are saying, though, is that they are processing first come, first serve the original EIDL applications. And it's possible that 10K will drop at some point. That is a loan with no forgiveness program. It's just a loan with like a 30-year repayment timeline. And it like incredibly low interest rate. I think the interest rate is at 0.5 or 1%. So there apparently are tiramisu flavored Oreos. So what I want to know is, are the tiramisu flavored Oreos vegan? Because Oreos are typically vegan, but not every flavor is. Oreos, actually regular Oreos is one of the things that I will get when I'm like in a foreign country and I need like gas station food or something. Because I know that it is vegan. So, and it outside the US, they come in like single sleeves generally that are like branded and everything, rather than like here they come in these like huge trays because America's portion sizes are outrageous. But yeah, that single sleeve, it's been my dinner in like China. I ate a lot of sleeves of Oreos on the Trans-Siberian Railway because you could like buy them when you stopped in a town at the like little tiny kiosk on the train platform when you had like 10 minutes. So I'd like get water and a sleeve of Oreos and occasionally Pringles, because Pringles are also vegan. So fun facts that you didn't come here to learn. Anyway, I think we have another question. Are folks ready for another question, or should we continue talking about tiramisu? Particularly notable that these tiramisu flavor Oreos, which Denise pointed out, are beg to be dipped in White Russians, which I think sounds true.
Kitten bath is excellent right now.
Is the kitten bath the primary content?
Yeah.
That's the most important. And she's really going for it. Is she freeze?
Oh, she just flattened out.
Some really cute things are happening over here. All right.
Question?
All right, let's go to this next question. I'm finishing the donut while I think I'm not on camera.
Lillian, I need help. I love your YouTube channel. I'm trying to apply for unemployment, and it's failing me. Do you have the rest on your phone?
Oh, you want me to grab it? I was like, the mics aren't going to pick you up, are they? All right. I am trying to apply for unemployment and it's failing me. I just finished teaching through the University of Georgia on a studio abroad. My summer work teaching art camps in Ohio has been canceled due to COVID. I thought to apply in Georgia since I just technically finished working there, but the application said I should live there, so I've waited until Ohio's came out. So today, I try Ohio's, but it also won't let me because I answered yes to working in another state since 2019. How in the world can this be? I have a driver's license in Ohio, and I always have worked in Ohio. And then I asked a follow-up question, which is, where did you earn your income in 2019? Because remember what I said about those quarters? So they responded, of course, I technically worked in both Georgia and Ohio in 2019. I've had some W-2 work, but it was always considered temporary, and I still consider Ohio my home state. However, like I mentioned above, Ohio won't let me apply because I have worked in other states in 2019, not full-time, but in part, and Georgia won't let me apply because I don't live there. I am still so confused. So this is understandable. This is actually a confusing thing, whether it under normal unemployment times, not that we live in anything resembling normal unemployment times anymore, but this can end up being very confusing for out-of-state work. So every single state now since 2009 has participated in a unified unemployment kind of system behind the scenes. So they expect, Ohio is like, you know, I'm from the Ohio-Kentucky border, and I knew a lot of people who lived in Kentucky and worked in Ohio and vice versa, and I knew plenty of people who would have had income or residence on both sides of the border. And there, of course, are a lot of people in a lot of different states for which that is true. And so remember how I mentioned that unemployment is a partnership between the states and the federal government. There's two different trusts. Well, they essentially, the federal government, in order to just kind of make states do things, said, okay, we have this consolidated unemployment system that we're going to have in the back. So it sounds like in both of these cases, this is W-2 income, although I was a little concerned because you said summer studio, and that sounds suspiciously like a fellowship. And since you mentioned it was through the University of Georgia, I want to add one more complicated thing, which is the fact that you may not have been paying into the unemployment system in Georgia at all. So typically, if you are doing student work, like graduate teaching fellowships, scholarship work, or anything for a university, you're in a different kind of technical classification. So even though you'll look like a W-2 employee and everything like that, you actually don't get unemployment insurance or pay into Social Security. That income is essentially exempt. So a lot of student income will be considered exempt, and that is true often for even people that are like adjunct fellows, depending on how they're classified. So you could be a professor, an adjunct professor, and turn out to be in the category where they haven't actually been paying into unemployment. Does that all make sense? There's also one other category of people, which is people that work for religious nonprofits or churches. Quite often, like pastors or like leaders in churches, their income is never pays into Social Security or unemployment systems for reasons I don't fully understand, but I think it has something to do with, like, I don't know, separation of church and state. I don't really get it. But their income never does. But even if you're a regular employee or like a lay person employee for a religious nonprofit, you may not actually have paid into the unemployment system. And if you didn't pay into the unemployment system, never fear. You are still covered under pandemic unemployment system, but it will not be based on those like the normal unemployment system. So in the case of you now living in Ohio, having income to claim in Ohio, and having some Georgia income, you should be, when you walk through the form. I actually found a screenshot from Ohio website, and I figured it was better to answer this specifically because it is different in every state than to answer it generally. So Aaron, can you put up the state screenshot thing? Yeah, that one. So Ohio specifically said dealing with out-of-state employment. The first thing, however, that I do want you to check is that Georgia unemployment is you're paying into the unemployment system at all. One thing you can do is you can go onto the Georgia website and check your quarters to see if you have any wage history. But the Ohio system essentially says it might take an extra 2 weeks, but theoretically, all the states are supposed to work together to essentially combine your income and your wage quarters from both states. So if you were paying into the system in both places in 2019, as long as you have enough income in those quarters to hit their minimum, then you would qualify for unemployment. You do want to apply in Ohio if that is where you are domiciled. And Ohio, I would also say, was very explicit about it. They actually walked through the screens. So I will try to link to the actual sheet where they walk you through the screens. That being said, these are screenshots taken before they updated their system for pandemic unemployment. But it should be that even if you selected you worked in another state, it should pull from that database of other states' employers once you click Georgia, and one of those will be University of Georgia or your summer camp or whatever. Does that make sense? I talked really fast right there. But it shouldn't be stopping you if you have out-of-state unemployment. One possible really easy thing is that if it turns out that Georgia income was either 1099 and you weren't paying into the quarters, or was for like University of Georgia and you weren't actually getting wage file claims under the unemployment system, then it's extremely possible that you're in the situation where you can just say no to did you work out of state in Georgia. So generally you don't want to underreport income for unemployment forms, but if I mentioned, these forms are real screwed up right now, and they're generally telling people, do what you have to do to make it go forward. The last thing I want to say is that technically, to get unemployment, you have to be active and available and seeking work. But there is that a lot of that has been lifted now, and most states are saying that you're considered active and available and seeking work. You don't have to necessarily, if you're getting unemployment insurance, you don't necessarily need to be like, oh, I have to go out and apply for a grocery job and put myself at risk, because that requirement to look for work has been slightly lifted. Most states still kind of have a system that is going to make you like prove what you did each week. But if you're under the pandemic unemployment system, the claims in most states are not going to make you do that. And then additionally, you're considered active and available for work if you are like willing to go back to work, and also if you're like in touch with your employer. You are also only considered temporarily unemployed, and in that case you didn't ever have to look for work. You just had to be willing to go back to work when your employer. So I could go on a capitalist rant about how all these states are reopening now, and a lot of businesses are going to be putting pressure on their workers to come back. And essentially, if you've been extended an offer of reemployment and you turn it down from your former employer, then you can't keep claiming unemployment benefits. So that is a really important thing to know. If you work for a small employer that maybe got the payroll protection loan and wants to try to put you back on payroll, it's worth having a conversation with them about like, if it's not actually safe for us to start working or open back up, can you not please reoffer me employment, because then I wouldn't be able to get unemployment insurance anymore, and maybe it's not safe. In other cases, like you might be very willing to start working for your employer again, or your employer might just be wanting to pay you using the payroll protection loan to do remote work or something that isn't going to put you at risk. In which case, yeah, I think money from your employer is easier in some ways. Like working for money is a lot easier than dealing with these unemployment systems, if that makes sense. So, oh, Joe pointed out that I was on camera while finishing the donut. Cool. Great. Thanks, Aaron, for doing that. Oh, Denise noted Pringles too. Yes, Pringles was the other thing I mentioned. Permanent lap kitten. I wish that she was a lap kitten. I'm a little sad, but I'm very happy that she's up there. Should we just switch to the cat all the time? Oh, she's on the screen now. I see. Yes. Well, I don't actually think that she's done with the bath, Christy. So Christy said, oh, kitten nap baths are exhausting. I'm pretty sure this is actually just the drying stage. So she will clean a whole side and get it wet and then let it dry while she naps on that side. And then she'll turn and then clean in the other one. Art of the Budget says that's my pal. I think UGA is W-2 adjunct, but she is 1099 and self-proprietorship. Yeah, I am sorry that it's so complicated. So, oh, your friend that wrote is in Italy and asleep right now? Okay. Hopefully, are they living in Ohio or Italy? I don't know which is lower risk right now. But yeah, so it is going to be complicated one way or the other, but I think it's really important to make sure to check. And if it is 1099 income in a different state, even if you were physically located in that state, you should claim in the state you currently live, and hopefully whichever one you have W-2 quarters in. So, yes. That would be what I recommend. And if you are a sole proprietor and you're trying to make a claim, definitely make a claim in the state that you live and is your business place and where your driver's license is and everything. And then you're going to have to go through all those steps that I mentioned for claiming unemployment as a sole proprietor. Oh, apparently they're still in Italy because that's where they were teaching and the borders closed. Oh my gosh. That sounds very stressful. I am very sorry. I'm sorry for your friend. I guess Italy is reopening now, but I don't know when the borders are gonna come back up or whatever. I know they were doing like repatriation flights for some people, but I know some folks that got out of Spain like hours before the borders officially shut down and stuff. So, well, that was an exhausting hour of YouTube, I feel like. There will be, so we are slightly behind on this week's episode, but we will be back on track soon. I'm really excited about some of the episodes coming out, so I hope you all are too. And hopefully there will also be a non-live stream video coming out as well. So, oh, your friend wanted to wake up if she could for the stream. I mean, to be fair, it does start at like 1 a.m. Italian time. So I don't know. It's not very fair. I think Italy is I think Italy is 2 hours ahead of GMT. Yeah, that sounds awful. So, I mean, unless you're super into it, but there will be a replay for anybody that would like to understand this. Okay, well, folks, thank you for joining me on your Saturday evening or your Sunday morning, as is the case for the folks on the other side of the world. We are back on Kitten Cam because that is the most exciting camera of all of the cameras. One-Eyed Cat says cats are lazy. I mean, so are humans, really, I think, deep in our souls. I think that cats actually just have a really good early retirement plan worked out, whereby we do all the work and then they get passive income from us that supports their lifestyle. That's pretty much it. Well, thanks for joining, folks. I think we will wrap up. I will try to put some links down in the description for this episode. And if you're not subscribed to this channel, please subscribe. Maybe I can like get over 400 subscribers because I'm extreme fancy soon. It is very laughable to me how few subscribers I have on YouTube compared to listenership for the show and how much more work it is really to put out a live stream. There is so many things around me right now. I wish you could see what it looks like. Oh, before I went, I was asked to talk about my outfit by Claire. Okay, so once again, this is a shirt from Korean, sketchy Korean website. I think it was like $5. And then these pants are pleated pants that are like all the way down, and they're bright pink, and I got them for I think £5 on the side of the road in London, and they say they're from Topshop, but they came from like the dudes that sell like racks and racks of clothing just like in the middle of the street in East London, and I'm not like positive that the label that says Topshop is correct, but they are at the very least a Topshop ripoff because I looked them up and found the like the actual pants in an old listing on the Topshop website. So they were either dead stock from Topshop or an attempt to be a fake version. But yeah, I think I paid £5 or £6 for these, so like less than $10. And I mainly did that because I was like, well, no, it was just purely I just was was out to get lunch from the office and was passing by, and I went, yes, I need hot pink pants. They're also like 7/8 length. I discovered when I found the original listing, which would explain why I didn't need to hem them myself, because they are meant to be not full length pants on normal sized people. So, all right. Thank you all for joining today. I have now answered questions about my outfit and unemployment. I will try to make next week's stream be more applicable to the 75% of America that isn't unemployed and also people outside the US. I have been having a very interesting conversation with my friend about different countries' responses and ways that they got income to folks. For example, Canada did an excellent job of getting everybody $2,000 a month in unemployment system, direct deposited. They've had way less hiccups in the program because they already do give a lot of low income people money each month through the child tax credit and stuff. So it would be interesting to compare how different countries are reacting. But if you have suggestions or questions for what I should cover next week, let me know. We could also just do a fun live stream and not talk about money and maybe do a mukbang again or something. So, all right. Well, thank you all. Please stay hydrated and wash your hands and stay safe till next week.